Here is a quick review of the areas of basic shapes. So to find the area of a rectangle, you're going to do length times width, also known as base times height. And that's why in your formula, you might see it as A equals L times W, or as A equals B times H. So length and width, or you can call them base and height. And here's a quick example. So you see those 4 right angles, meaning you know for sure it's a rectangle. That's my length and my width. So when you go ahead and multiply them together, you have the area is 9 times 5, which equals 45 centimeters squared, because your units will be squared. In our square, and again, a square is a combination of a rectangle and a rhombus, 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. Instead of thinking of it as length times width, it's the same side twice. Or if I do want to use length and width, think about them as both having a length of b, so b squared. So in this example down below, let's go ahead and add the markings, assuming we do have a square. I see 8s on both sides, so my area is 8 times 8, so 8 times 8, which is 64 meters squared. In our triangle, it won't matter what kind of triangle you have, right, isosceles, scalene, acute, obtuse, doesn't matter. As long as you know the length of the base of the triangle, as well as the height, or also called the altitude, we're going to do 1/2 that base times that height. So here's an example with that height. All across is the base. It's another example of height and the base. So you could write it as 1/2 base times height, or base times height divided by 2. In this example, I've given you an obtuse triangle. The height or altitude is 4, and the base is 12. So your area is 1/2 times 4 times 12. Well, half of 4 is 2, and 2 times 12 is 24. So 24 inches squared. Down below here, we have a shape that we haven't talked about too much this year, only in terms of special properties. Down here we have a trapezoid. So a trapezoid has 1 pair of parallel sides, at least that's the definition we're using right now. And we're going to call this as base 1, and this one is base 2. They're interchangeable, they're just different bases. Those bases are the sides that are parallel. You can have isosceles trapezoids, you can have other kinds, it doesn't matter. To find their area, we're going to do 1/2 times the sum of the 2 bases, and then times the height. So directly up and down, or something that forms a nice right angle. So in this example here, my base 1 is 3, my base 2 is 6, my height is 10. So what I'm going to be solving is area equals 1/2 3 plus 6 times 10. Add the bases and then times 10. So 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 times 10 is 90. And half of 90 is 45. So my area is 45, and the units are meters squared. And lastly, I have my circle. And the area of a circle is pi r squared. So in this case here, my radius is 8. So A equals, again, pi r squared, so 8 squared, and this gets me 64 pi, and my units are inches here, so I'm going to have inches squared. So these basic shapes are going to be used when finding the compositions of other larger shapes, all based on rectangles, squares, triangles, trapezoids, and circles. And as you take a look at that trapezoid, you could even see how the trapezoid could be broken down to be rectangles and triangles, or squares and triangles, depending on the shape you've been given.